Hi, everybody. I'm Grant Moniger. I'm the creative director and co-director of programming at the American Cinematheque. Today, we have a Q&A for Werewolves Within with filmmaker Josh Ruben and screenwriter Mishna Wolff, moderated by our good friend from the Etheria Film Festival, Heidi Honeycutt. Enjoy.
I want to say thank you so much to Josh and Mishna for being here. And I'm Heidi Honeycutt. I'm so excited to have been asked to do this Q&A because I absolutely adored this film. And Grant is right, audience people. If you haven't seen the film, go see it. See it in a theater because it's really funny and fun, and it's a great experience with other people. And not all films are like that. So when you get the chance, you should take it. I want to start this Q&A by asking you, Mishna, a little bit about how the script came to be, because there's an interesting story behind this. You were part of a fellowship, and all out of that fellowship came this script, and now we have this amazing film. So can you tell us a little bit about that, and how'd you get in, and what did you do when you were in it?
Yeah, I applied just like everybody else, and it didn't exist. So I was the first year of this fellowship, and I very proudly so. They gave me some games to play, some games to look at, and I just played video games until I stumbled on Werewolves Within, and I got on the internet and there were people arguing with each other. And I was like, I think this is more than just a hunch, because a lot of games you notice don't play that way. Like if you're playing a game like Counter-Strike or something like that, and everyone's arguing with each other, you're in trouble. But there was something about the amount of conflict involved with this Werewolves Within game that I thought would lend itself really well to a movie about private justice.
So for people in the audience that don't know, Werewolves Within is a Ubisoft game. And they had this amazing fellowship where they invited, this is how I think it went. I think it was something like this. Oh my God, we have these amazing games. And wouldn't it be great if we could also turn our games into some kind of movie and make money off of it? Yeah, but who here is going to write that? Well, why don't we, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we ask people to submit, and we'll pick the talented ones, and then they can go through all the stuff and write something. And that's where they were like, she wrote it and we like this one, and it was the good one. And and it became a movie. And then Ubisoft is like, win-win, what a great idea, Brian, or whoever, thought of it. So that's pretty cool. When
I like your hypotheticals. It didn't quite happen that way. I wandered in actually on a general meeting, and they were like, hey, you wanna apply for this fellowship? And I was like, wait, it's for women only? Because that's an important detail.
Yeah, so only for when it's sexist.
But it's a totally sexist fellowship.
Yeah.
Sorry, men. Yeah. You can have everything else, but we have the Ubisoft Women's Fellowship. And but they didn't, to their credit, they didn't say, come take a look at our female games. You know what I mean? It was like, come take a look at our games.
Like, do you like werewolves? Do you like
exactly.
Really, just real fast, what were some of the other games that you played that you said you were like, nah?
It's so hard to remember. There was God, I have the worst memory ever. So you're talking, I played like 50 games, but one of those I really liked was called Red Steel. It was kind of an interesting samurai game that was made. It was a Yakuza game actually made for Wii. And I played that on my Wii. I actually bought an old Wii so that I could play it. And that one was fun. There were a lot of interesting games. The Trials games, which are these dirt bike games, are super campy and like they have a real 80s dirt bike movie feel. That was definitely something that sparked for me. And, I still love the idea of an 80s dirt bike movie, in modern day, but, they make the best games. I mean, they make really exceptional games. So, it wasn't any sort of, drudgery to sift through their game catalogs.
And Josh, did you play the game?
I did. Once I landed the gig, I played Werewolves Within with the creators of the game, and I was so nervous, and I did not do well. I was like kind of guessing too, because it's more than just a social deduction. It's like also there's like a book and a menu and like tools. And I was like trying to get my bearings, like how to select things and use them. And they were so sweet. And I was also trying to absorb, like, we were best out of 3. I was trying to absorb what I could kind of pull in from the game, whether it was, some old quality of a crone character, or some product of the environment or something. And yeah, ultimately I just had a good time.
So it seems like the game, and I haven't played the game, but from what I've heard, it seems like it's very character oriented. There's a lot of, like you said, deduction. You have to make choices, decisions, and think. And I think a lot of that comes out in the story that you wrote, Mishna, because you have this ensemble group of people who are isolated. One of them might be a werewolf, and we don't. And the characters have to go through this event trying to figure it out, and so does the audience. And I'll say this: I've seen a lot of werewolf movies, and werewolves it's one of my favorite horror subgenres. And I think not since perhaps The Howling 5 have I seen a film in which I did not know who the werewolf was. Like,
that's such a compliment.
I didn't know. Like, I was like, no, I really didn't know. And I think a lot of audience members, well, maybe they're all like, no, Heidi, we all knew except you. But I think that some people probably felt the same way. And that's really fun. At some point, I wasn't sure if there even was a real werewolf. I didn't know. Can you talk a little bit about creating these particular characters? And Josh, you took these characters and you brought them to life on screen. So let's talk a little bit about the character development, some of your favorite characters in the film, and where you got them from.
I'll start and then I'll pass to Josh. For me, in these social deduction games, you're really dealing in archetypes, because like when you're playing a social deduction game, usually people are their job. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the baker, that's the mail person, that's the whatever. And in a movie like Clue, which is also a social deduction movie, it's like everyone's a color. I mean, you cannot get more archetypical than Professor Plum, Colonel Mustard. I mean, they're their jobs and they're a color.
Yeah.
So, I knew from the jump that we were dealing in archetypes. And, that made me think of sort of modern society and the kind of archetypes that we sort of live with and judge, and sort of our sort of identities. And so I thought, it'd be really fun to take these really sort of stock horror movie social deduction archetypes and plug in some sort of modern day themes. And that was always what I was working with in my head. And then Josh took it a step further. Take it away.
Oh, but up to no, really it was giving the actors something to latch on to. So it was like the archetypes of it all, the articulation on this on of Mishna's words of the script was so sort of, I don't want to say self-explanatory, but the characters left off the page and give the actors a lot to work with, which was wonderful. And then my job was really guiding actors if they felt they kind of needed assistance boring into motivation and psychology of it all, which we mainly talked about the tone, as I addressed to all the actors, especially those who are more skeptical of this essentially first time filmmaker. I'd done a smaller film, was I want to make Fargo if it were an Amblin film. So here for the actors that needed something to latch on to, we had more extensive conversations, but so much of it was just the magic of great casting, and then sort of leaning into, or articulating, communicating the tone. I wanted that kind of irreverent sort of Fargo vibe, but in the arachnophobia, Amblin kind of shit hits the fan of a small town, kind of a shell. So.
Mishna, comedy is hard. And it's hard to write, and it's hard to put on the screen too. So we're going to get to that, Josh, next. But you have a little bit of a background in comedy.
Yeah.
How would you describe the comedy in this film? What were you going for? And what do you think is the funniest part of the movie, of the script?
Oh my God. I don't think about writing comedy. It's the byproduct of not for me, like when I write, I'm never like thinking about writing comedy. I don't think it's not like it's not something. There was a time when all I thought about was writing jokes and how to write jokes and the fewest amount of words, and I'm gonna write a 7-word joke. But it's like I'm gonna get on stage, I'm not gonna say anything, I'm gonna just make jokes without saying anything. That's gonna be the whole thing. I mean, I really experimented with comedy for a long time, and I decided at some point that it's just not that important. I mean, it is and it isn't, but finding it, an emotional core for the story, and finding the voices of the characters and what their worldview was always sort of at the forefront. And then there were actually drafts where I had to take out huge amounts of comedy because there was no tension, because I kept breaking the tension with laughs, and I just had to dump jokes, like just take jokes out, because it does break, when you get a laugh, it does break the tension especially in the first act. I remember it was silly at first, and then I had to just like, you get out of here and you get out of here. So I think it's just always alchemy and finding the tone of something, and I mean, for me at least, I think the characters come first and their voices have to guide everything, because they're driving the movie. So
Josh, in terms of directing comedy, I think that it all has to do with pacing and timing. And can you talk a little bit about how you put these characters? You didn't just have like one character do it. You have an ensemble cast of characters, all interacting, all doing something in the same scene a lot of the time. How do you direct and pace this film with all the actors and get the timing right so that you get that? How do you know when you got it and that it's funny also?
That's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of screaming, everyone listen to me, and I'll articulate what we're trying to do. I've repeated this quite a bit, but it's true. I learned this kind of this lesson in theater school forever ago. And Mike Nichols was actually one of the masterclass instructors when he wasn't like shooting Angels in America forever ago. But it was essentially like his whole thing was don't get caught trying to be funny. And kind of like when there's nothing else to do, just say the words. So again, so much of it becomes about casting, and like I ended up getting these, this great ensemble that plays drama for real and can play terror for real, and are also sort of comedy superheroes in many ways. Kathy Curtin isn't necessarily who you'd call a comedic actor, but you can give her a hysterical line and she can read it with an emotional gravity, whereas someone like Harvey might articulate or improvise rather one of the funniest lines you might hear and didn't expect. And you just have to leave yourself open to letting your actors feel the freedom to do all the above, but also jumping in and kind of saying, that's a bit too far, I'm catching you, pull it back, or give me a bit more here. But so much of it is about honestly like playing the gravity for real, and then within the boundaries of that, it's like, yeah, let's give him yellow teeth and have him do a wrench dick joke.
There you go. So Josh, I think you mentioned something kind of like this in a previous interview, about opportunities, and in a world where there are all these big like Marvel films and this happening, like for an independent voice to be able to come out and make something that other people actually get to see, like Jordan Peele, for instance. And then you end up being able to express yourself and have this filmmaking voice is kind of rare a little bit. But it seems to be happening right now with you in this film. And Mishna, it didn't like fall into your lap. Like you had to like apply to a fellowship. If you had sucked, you wouldn't have gotten in. And then you had to write the script. And then Josh, you had to figure out how to write it and you had to pitch it. So, can you talk a little bit about how important these kinds of opportunities are for people who aren't already in doing the big giant Marvel films, in order to get your foot in the door and make something happen like this?
That's an awesome question. It's so crucial. I mean, some of the most memorable films to me of the last 10 years, just to call out my IFC fam, our genre films, our original genre films, The Babadook, Autopsy of Jane Doe, obviously all of Jordan Peele's work. And I was actually just reading randomly a quote that I'm going to butcher, but Jordan Peele talking about how, every time I feel like I'm, like pushing a boundary, or that it's not going to be commercially accepted, it's actually a good thing. You have to break boundaries. All of the greats have kind of felt that way. Not to put myself in that position, but you have to treat a great story, when a great story does come along, with TLC, and hold it up to the TLC, like Joe Dante or Spielberg, or even Karan Kusama might give a great genre film, treat it very seriously and not throw it away. And I think again, just to touch on the casting of it all, and any skepticism that these actors had, especially not knowing who I was, or necessarily the producers or this work, is, hey, the script is good, where are you going at with this tonally? And it's like, regardless of this grand title, and regardless of this grand idea that this is a world where werewolves exist, we're going to play this stuff for real, and I'm going to take care of you stylistically. So it's hugely important. And I'd like to think that this is the beginning of a continuing wave of original genre horror, or genre that's also fun, because I think we all need to, have fun now.
I have one more, unless Mishna, you want to comment on that, which you can, but if you don't want to, it's okay too. Don't worry. But I do have
it. But I will say that I think there's a budget level at which people get an opportunity to be very creative, and that's also, like, we had a really I feel like great team over at Ubisoft who was really, they're just very open and creative, and I always felt like I could take risks in front of them and make mistakes, and have something fall flat with a thud, and it wasn't like I had to walk out with my tail between my legs. So
right on. I have another question, and then I know I have to get to some audience questions because they have a lot of questions for you, but I wanted to ask one last thing, which is the werewolf itself. So werewolves are, like I said, they're one of my favorites. I love them. What about the werewolf is interesting to you? And what did you put into the story regarding werewolves and subtext? I think, Josh, I've read you talk a little bit about that before, and I love what you said, so I'm going to make you say it again. And also, I don't want to spoil anything, but Mishna, how did you come to the decision to make the werewolf, who that person is, the werewolf? How did you choose that person?
It was always that person.
Always. Okay.
It was always that person. But getting back to werewolves, I've always liked werewolves because it deals with appetite, and I'm a woman who can eat a great deal of food. So I've always sort of been obsessed with, it's like eating. There's something very visceral and animal about it. It taps into the animal pleasure centers of the brain. There's just something so carnal and human about just being hungry.
How about you, Josh?
I mean, they were the one creature that always freaked me out. Silver Bullet was like the most dreadful thing I'd ever seen, even Monster Squad, and in the most fun way, but they were the only creature, the only monster that ever freaked me out. And I loved Freddy and Jason and the Blob and the Crypt Keeper, and everything vampires and Christopher Lee and all the above. But werewolves always scare the crap out of me, and that was what was so exciting about this, and certainly about the character, about the reveal, and the allegory there.
Right on. Our first audience question is great. That's a great segue into this. In addition to Shaun of the Dead, wait, hold on. I'm going to do in addition to Shaun of the Dead, were there any other horror comedies that influenced Werewolves Within? Thanks, Aaron. So in addition to Shaun of the Dead, were there any horror comedies that influenced you?
From a directorial standpoint, I think Arachnophobia is my touchstone because it is such a perfect tonal balance of sort of comic book movie to a degree, horror film, and straight comedy. I mean, the example I keep talking about is, Jeff Daniels facing off against a giant arachnid, but arguing with himself what Bordeaux to throw at that arachnid is like the chef's kiss touchstone, and to complement that, you have Delbert played by John Goodman, like the most sort of, outlandish character. And yet it's also played for real, not many moments in that movie we can get caught trying to be funny. That's a big one.
And just to rattle off a few more, I definitely liked The Thing and Alien. Both of them had a really contained environment. And I was always thinking about these contained environments when I was writing.
I actually thought about Alien a lot while watching it, where I just thought to myself, the main idea of this film is essentially the same. It's isolation and who do you trust? But this one's a really funny comedy horror version of it.
If Alien was funny.
Yeah, if Alien was funny, it's a lot like that. That's how I'm going to describe it. It's like Alien, but if it was funny. Here's a question. What do you, and I think it's for both of you, what do you feel is the most integral part of both of your creative processes?
Ooh, Mishna, what's yours?
I think it would be finding the character's point of view. I think point of view is always super important to my creative process. So just knowing what makes a character tick, but mostly like, what's their credo? Like, what is because I'm about to upset it, whatever it is. I'm about to challenge it. I think, just tapping into characters' worldviews and sort of what makes them tick, and, who they watch on late night, like, who do they watch on late
Where
night?
do they fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, and that's the fun part of writing. I think, it's also like, just like, who is this crazy person under my pen?
God, I can't, it's so hard to think. I mean, it's depending on, I guess, just, from the filmmaking seat, I think it's about, how can I articulate like what it takes to be the barometer for feeling the movie, like truly, like I think it's like over familiarizing, like over preparing, so that I'm especially in the instance of being a hired gun in this instance, and wanting to convince and bring along a troupe of actors, producers, and a brilliant writer is like, finding that justification for everything, like making that subtext work for me as a movie lover, to be able to articulate that, and be the interpreter. So I think it's over reading, over preparing, and watching movies that sort of feel like the film again and again, and actually trying to watch with a studious eye if I can.
And I don't know if you do this, Josh, but I will look at something I've just written and I will go, what would I rather be watching?
Yeah.
Like, what would I rather be watching than this thing I just plotted out? It's like, what I'd rather be watching is this thing I'm about to rewrite it as. Because I always, I always think about, I mean, I'm always watching TV and thinking, what would I rather be watching?
If this were on, would I put on, Frasier? Yeah, that's a tough one.
Click.
Yeah. Josh and Mishna, when did you first fall in love with movies?
I mean, it was pretty early and pretty brutal in terms of what films were put in front of me. It's like American Tail, but also Jaws,
My dad started stealing cable when I was like 5. And I saw a movie I saw Brian De Palma's Body Double. Which is, if you've seen it, it's practically a porno. Like, it's pretty much like, I learned everything in that hour and a half. And that was I was in. I was like, yeah, this is a strong and enduring relationship.
And then you can, at parties, like you can start that conversation. That conversation starts like, "Are you a De Palma baby?" You know, and then those people know, you know, just know. Oh, I was a De Palma baby.
Yeah.
So as usually happens, we have some aspiring filmmakers in the audience who are here to learn. And this person says, I'm interested in working in Hollywood and making a comedy horror movie is part of a genre. I would like to direct or play a role on those types of movie genres. I'm also fond of sci-fi, romantic type movies. How long does it take you to get into these roles as an actor before getting into Hollywood industry as a director? I think what they mean is this person's really interested in genre filmmaking and comedy genre filmmaking. And so they want to hear what you have to say about how long did it take for you to get work, Josh, I guess, before you got to direct the film yourself, working on other films?
Well,
I think that's what they said.
Funny question, because I started making stuff because I couldn't get an agent, and I thought I wanted to be like a famous actor. Especially growing up with a mom who was like, "You're gonna be Jim Carrey." It didn't happen. So my advice across the board when I get these types of questions is to find your weirdos, find your fellow troupe members, and start making stuff. I did that when I was 18, 19 years old. I had moved to the city. I'd met friends at summer camp who I fell for creatively. And then we joined up with a few other friends who I met in different walks of life. We actually formed a sort of a sketch group and started making videos. So my response to this degree is like, find people in your circle or create your circle with people who are, someone is going to be interested in the visuals and wanting to pick up a camera. Someone's going to be more interested in like the acting side and writing side, and actually finding that, that sort of machine that you can try stuff out, and you can, make stuff and fuck up and experiment. Nothing is better or more integral. That was the beginning of a 20-year career for me, or I guess arc, but 3, 4, 5 years of making my own stuff got the attention of College Humor, and that turned into a 7-year job. But that was like, essentially film school. Just kind of jumped in, making stuff with my friends, and that was all because I like found my tribe. So that's what I recommend at every turn, I'd say.
Mishna, how about you? How did you get into it all, and how long were you writing before you sold something?
Well, I mean, I'm an author as well, so I've had a lot of success in the book world, and that was sort of the first thing I sold. Before that, I wrote articles and did a lot of live storytelling. So I sold jokes. I sold jokes to late night. I sold jokes to Friars Club roast. I sold jokes to, radio stations, and it's like, I guess it's ABW it's always be writing is like my thing. And, I wrote 100 drafts of a screenplay that just, I had to finally walk away from because it just wouldn't come together in a way that made any sense, but it was the best film school I ever could have gone to. So I think, taking risks in front of live audiences is great. And I think, writing is great, but if you want to be a director or an actor, just make your face pretty and
make your face pretty.
Get out there.
Get out there, and but I think Josh's way of making movies, like it's really admirable, and he's a journeyman now.
Yeah, I mean, no one's gonna walk up to you out of the blue if you have never done anything and say, "Hey, do you want to direct films?
No.
Would you like to direct one? Do you want to write a script?" You have to whoever asked the question in the audience, you have to work your ass off to get where you end up getting, and the harder you work, usually the better place you get to. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Heidi.
What was the casting process for this film like overall?
Oh man, it was incredible. I mean, you start with a genius like Gail Keller, whose whole thing is like cross-pollinating and thinking outside the box. different actors from different backgrounds and walks of life, outside the box casting. It was a confluence of working with Gail and also asking actors like George Basil and Harvey Guillen, who do you want to play your partner? Who do you want to play your husband? Who do you want to play your Gwen? So that they had skin in the game. That
was so smart, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it was really, at some point it's like a timing thing. It's like, okay, we gotta wrap this up, A, but B, it's thinking about, putting myself in the actor's shoes as someone who has acted before on location, thinking about, hey, okay, we're flying George and Harvey from LA to Fleischmann's, New York. You will be in the middle of nowhere in the winter. And it's kind of selfishly like my casting or my suggestion, George Basil from the get-go, is at least I'll have a friend I've known for close to 15 years. Milana, same thing. One of my dearest friends of many years, who's a complete genius. And for them to have a contribution, or at least to be able to say, hey, at the end of the day, it's summer camp or winter camp, I'll have someone to latch onto. And also that they're a comedic genius to boot. It just worked out wonderfully. And then, of course, it was also me writing my list of dream actors I've wanted to work with, Michael Chernus and, Michaela Watkins. And
also the chemistry was really good. You created a really nice chemistry. I mean, I only visited set once, but it felt to me like there was great chemistry between all the actors, and it was a nice environment.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep going because they haven't told me to stop. What was the most difficult scene to shoot, Josh? And Mishna, did you know it would be difficult to shoot?
I'm waiting to hear what Josh says, and then I'll answer that. I think he got rid of some that were too difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is the script was, it's so ambitious. It changed. It had to change for budget and time and days and commute and all this crap. But I think it was a tie for me. There was one day that was like logistically almost impossible, where Finn and Cecily meet the town, like are walking from, we were literally making our way through downtown Main Street, Phoenicia, with something like 13 setups, and we had to do it before the sun went down. And no time to improvise, no time to, kind of really play. And it was just kind of like getting in the can. So that was sort of, the painful conversation with my actors. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's like, I promise you, I got your back. That was really good. And then kind of watching like my crestfallen, actors, like, we don't get to play. But we also didn't have two cameras the whole time. And I can say, like, the most anxiety I had about shooting anything was the accusation scene. That's the heart of the film. That's, that's what the game is, where the spirit is, the heart of it all is. And luckily we not only had the two cameras granted for those 2 days and change of shooting, but the actors really brought it and got it, and we're down to rehearse, and they pushed.
Yeah, and that's what I assumed would be the hardest to shoot.
Yeah, pointing fingers. No. Sorry. Oh God, the anxiety I have about shooting group stuff, man.
I saw it too. I mean, I was there for that day, and I was marveling at your sort of precision with everything. It was really, you really had a handle on it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, depends, the diaper, you know what I mean? So you just wear it and no one knows, and no one knows. You show nothing up here, but everything else,
Yeah. We've all been there.
Like, no one knows what we're wearing, like,
that's
below
right.
the waist, right? Like, yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Last question. So, Josh, and I think this ties into what you were just talking about, shooting the scenes, but also what I asked about the comedy and pacing. How closely do you work with the editor when?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh man, so closely. I relied on Brett Bachman, and also with Patrick Lawrence on my first film as well. But the editor is everything. You want someone who will challenge you, as Brett did, to say, I actually felt lazy on some days, because he would be like, the one to challenge me and say, might it be better for the narrative if we had X, Y, or Z ADR to expose some piece of information, or might we want to try an alternate cut of this scene where blank happens? And I would say, oh, like, I guess so. Like, can we just like get it done and then watch it, you know, like the fun part, so we can like, I can see the bird's eye view and then pain over why it isn't working. And I mean, he essentially, you know, he ended up being, in my mind, a producer of sorts, because he was so creatively genius. I work incredibly close with the editor, but my first conversation with any editor who I work with is, the last thing I want to be is the like pecking bird over your shoulder, micromanaging. I'm just going to sit here and let you do your thing, and you just kind of like, let's have an open dialogue about it. Because I've witnessed the standing, shouting over the, like, neurotically shouting over the shoulder presence, and you know, I already have a family that's, you know, so I didn't want to do that to anyone. My family's great, but yes, heavily.
They sound
involved.
like your biggest fan, Josh.
They are. I know. It's like, Mom, I get it. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we've got to wrap, but this was really fun. And thank you guys both so much for coming here and being a part of this Q&A and doing it. And for our audience, like, they love this. I love this. And thank you to the Cinematheque for letting me do the Q&A, because they know that I absolutely adored this film. So I'm going to go watch it again, like probably tonight, and just be like, yeah, I talked to them earlier, like geek out.
Oh man. Hey,
Yeah.
if it's playing in a theater near you, check it out. Check it out on VOD.
Yeah.
Show your buds.
All right.
You know?
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Heidi. Again, as they said, it's going to be streaming everywhere on Friday. See it in theaters if you can. And thanks for everyone for joining.